Motivation is short-lived. It's trying to light a fire under somebody or light a fire under yourself. It's like having a carrot before the horse. After a while, you run out of carrots and you're trying to replace the carrots with something else. It's good to have little motivations like that along the way, but it's from the outside. Inspiration is lighting a fire within. It comes to the Latin word inspire, which means to breathe in. And if we want to have more inspiring people, more inspiring life, more inspiring business, we need to become inspired people. And the best way that I know is to develop and define what is your highest purpose for being here on earth. That's very inspiring. And we can't change the world, but we can maybe change just a little piece of it. And then be that and inspire somebody else, which will bring it out to a bigger piece,
Welcome to the Blueprint Breakers podcast. What is a blueprint breaker? If you live your life outside the typical traditional lifestyle blueprint, you are a blueprint breaker. We are here to start a conversation, to assemble resources, and to build a community. This podcast is for empowered women in midlife and beyond who are preparing for a powerful next era of life. My name is Amy A. Palmer. I am your host and facilitator for our conversations. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show. To stay connected, up to date, and to receive all of our free resources and gifts along the way, join us at community.blueprintbreakers.com. In today's compelling episode, I sit down with the inspiring Lynnea Hagen, whose story is a testament to resilience and transformation. From navigating through personal tragedies and failed marriages to finding strength and redefining her purpose, Lynnea shares her journey of turning life's darkest moments into powerful catalysts for growth. Her vivid recounting of feeling stuck and her unique perspective on using life's challenges as fertilizer for personal development will resonate deeply with anyone feeling trapped. With a mission to inspire souls, Lynnea empowers leaders to exchange stuckness for passion and purpose. With over 30 years of coaching, international speaking, and writing, her holistic approach delivers inspiration and tangible results. She's a mom of twin entrepreneur sons, plus a community and arts volunteer. I hope you enjoy our conversation as much as I did. Hello, Lynnea. Welcome to Blueprint Breakers. It's so good to see you today.
It is so wonderful to be here, to see you again, Amy. Thank you.
After our last conversation, it just became so clear to me that you have such a depth and breadth of experiences and life stories and things to share that I just knew that my audience would be able to connect with. So I had to get you on the podcast. So thank you. Thank you for coming.
Well, thanks. A depth and breadth. Boy, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
The darkness and the light.
Yeah. I wanted to start with, for selfish reasons, this is a season that I'm personally in. And so I'd love to hear your wisdom around feeling stuck in life and like trying to move past that and how to do it, etc. I'd love to hear any thoughts or experiences that you have when you find yourself in that situation.
Oh, wow. Where do I begin? I'll go into a story that most people don't know. When I was in college, this is pretty heavy. Maybe I shouldn't share this one. But anyway, I hooked up with a guy that was very unhealthy. And when that was over, it was only like a few month relationship. We did get married, but that lasted like a month. And I was so embarrassed and ashamed. And I remember sitting and I really felt like I was in the bottom of a deep well. Yeah. It was dark. All I could see was looking up and seeing maybe a round light. And that basically that's almost exactly what it felt like and looked like to me. I guess through that and many other experiences, and if I want to go back, my sister was killed in an accident when I was 13. And so there's been a lot of loss, a lot of really dark times of the soul. And at some point when I was sitting in that hole, and during the times also I was trying to redefine myself after my sister's death of who I was besides the other child, and trying to be both children and trying to take care of my parents. At some point, I decided to just keep clawing my way up. And I tend to just try different things. I'm kind of an adventurer, I guess. So if somebody says, you want to do something, I just say yes. As long as it's legal, it's not going to hurt me or anybody else. But okay, I'll just try this. So a lot of it was just a lot of putting one foot in for the other and trying this thing and then maybe that thing. And during that whole process, just kind of learning and growing and developing some strength. I had an interesting conversation yesterday with somebody that I hadn't seen since May of 2010. I met him in CEO space, and somehow we've kept in touch, and we had coffee together years ago. And he asked me, he's been kind of following me. He said, what have you done in order to keep yourself growing and become healthy? And I said, for a long time, I was carrying around this big bag of poor me. And it felt like I had this big, heavy, stinky bag of manure tied to my ankle. I couldn't really move very far. I kept complaining about, how heavy it was and how stinky it was, and blaming my parents and blaming everybody else. But number one, I remember reading sometime that once you are past age 18, any decision you make and every action you take cannot be blamed on anybody but your own choices. And I went, well, shoot. I mean, I can't blame my mom. And at some point, I started picturing all this stuff because manure kind of piling up. I mean, I had horses. I know what it looks like. And I thought maybe I could just step on top of it and kind of create something where I can walk over a wall. But then I started looking at it, and this has developed my whole philosophy for life, is that this isn't manure. This is fertilizer. And in that kind of really earthy way, I started saying, hey, this is something that I can use to really develop something rich and something beautiful. And I'm not going to let it hold me back anymore. So I just kind of cut it off my ankle. And I just said, how can I grow with this? And I think that's really what pushed me into, I've been kind of a coach my whole life. Since my sister was killed, I was like the counselor for my parents, and which is very unhealthy. And my friends and everything. I just had a little bit more worldly wisdom because I had what I'd gone through when I was 13. And it was kind of lonely because I couldn't find any girls who were up to that level, the younger girls, because I had experienced more than they had. Eventually, I found friends as I got into my 30s. I had to grow up fast. But eventually, when I got into my 30s, I developed friendships that could be like sisters. But through all that, I think it really helped enrich me to be someone who could be there for other people, who could look at things from different angles and see the possibilities. And I'm a big possibilities thinker. And to also maybe see things from a huge perspective from the outside looking in. So that's part of the answer.
Wow, lots of goodness in there. So I love the way you reframed the pile of manure into fertilizer, and that it's visual that you talked about where you could, looking up and seeing sort of the light and trying something new. It sounds like trying something new helped pull you out when you were feeling in the depths. Right. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
Right. I think it's just a determination. I just put my foot down and said, this ain't working for me, kid, And I developed some very loving relationships. And after a period of many years, I started attracting really healthy people into my life. But it's not an instant process. It's not snap your fingers. It's especially when, I've gone through a lot of stuff besides what I just described. And a lot of it is just finally leaning back and taking an approach and saying, that was interesting. What's the gift in this? Or just trying to see it from a different angle. There's a great amount of strength we can derive by just being the observer rather than the person inside of it in the whole situation.
So there's a few nuggets in there that I heard. One is when you go through something or you've been through something, being able to sort of step back and look at it through that observer lens. And I guess you're figuring out where the fertilizer is in that, right? And what that is.
Yes.
And then the other one that I heard, which was something that I didn't learn till kind of late-ish in life, and I'm still learning, is that whole thing about getting rid of the people and the relationships that were draining and dragging you down and attracting more positive, more uplifting people to your life. Can you speak a little more on that? Because it's something that I think a lot of people want to be able to do, but it sounds like it's probably harder than it sounds.
Yeah, I think I know for myself, I'm very tenderhearted and I want to help everybody. And I'm a sounding board for friends, my past friends. But when I was working, I used to work for Disney. So I was working at Walt Disney World, and I developed a friend there who was a couple of years older than me, but had been really through the ringer with alcoholic mother. And she got pregnant and married when she was 18. And by the time she was 22, she had 3 kids. And then she married somebody else and they had 5 kids. And she was only 32 by the time I met her. And her second or third tumultuous marriage. And so when we would go to lunch together, she would just regale me with all these sad stories. And I started feeling really sad. And I don't want to feel really sad. And I would come home and I would tell my husband, oh my gosh, poor Sandy, this is what's going on now. And he finally said, I'm not listening to this anymore. And so when we got together the next day, I told Sandy, I said, Sandy, I can't listen to this anymore. I love you and I can't help you. I can be there for you, but you need to find somebody else to talk to. And it was hurtful for her, but at the same time, I really believe in quality of life. And if we're carrying around things or using cynicism, whatever, in order to make our life lousy, then I don't want to live like that. I refuse to live like that. It took some things where I felt like I was being maybe mean, but I'm not mean. You have to sometimes you just have to put up, the boundaries are very, very important. They're hugely important. And I have a phrase that I use when I speak. In fact, I was a guest speaker at a graduating class from my high school, and they brought me in. And I said, hang with the fire lighters, not the fire extinguishers. And if you feel like, boy, there's something being drained or something being squelched here, then that is not the place for you. And we don't have to take care of everybody, because you know what? Somebody else would come along to take care of them for you. And that was probably the biggest truth that I brought to myself. Someone else to come along to fill that spot. It doesn't have to be me.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Hang with the fire lighters, not the fire extinguishers. Whew.
I wish I could say that I originated that phrase, but I didn't.
It's good. So that probably meant that in some cases, maybe like completely ending the relationship, but in other, sometimes you can't, or if you're related to them or whatever, and you don't, sometimes it's changing the relationship or setting the boundaries, like you said, right?
Yeah. I can give you an example of that with my second husband. The 2 men I was married to, I had the habit of picking people who weren't very faithful. My second one was not faithful, but he was being unfaithful to me with men, and that was just a no keeper. But he was very confrontational, and I'm not a confrontational person. It feels like I'm being hit in the chest when I'm being confronted. But I learned to be in that because he was very confrontational. And so I went to a therapist, and she said, why don't you say to him, knock it off? I never thought about doing that. And she said to him, would you like that? And he goes, yeah, I would. And so when he was going on a screaming rant or something, I finally would just turn and say, Ron, knock it off. And it's like at a dog who's like maybe trying to attack you. Sometimes, I mean, I've come face to face with a dog who's attacking me and just say, no. And sometimes put up my foot, and when they run into their chest runs into my foot. I mean, sometimes we have to do that kind of figuratively or literally with people. Knock it off. And I think the best relationships are based on mutual respect. And as long as we're not being there in a place of strength and equality, we're not going to be respected. We have to fight for it sometimes.
Yeah. That's good. And that was good advice from the therapist. It probably caused it's almost like holding up a mirror to that person in that moment. You're like, knock it off so that they can see what, helping with the self-awareness piece,
Yeah. Or sometimes just walking away. And I said to him, and, I've got a partner now who's a wonderful, wonderful man. But sometimes I say, if you're going to raise your voice like that, then I will choose to walk away. It's a retraining process of ourselves as well as the other person.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully the other person is willing, wants to participate.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, like I said, these are lessons I'm still trying to figure out. So hopefully get that.
It's messy. Isn't it messy out there?
It is. Yeah. So another thing that really intrigues me about your story is that you've had periods of your life where you've been married, you've had periods of your life where you've been single. I know you shared with me last time that you embraced the various seasons of your life. You've had a variety of different types of professional experiences. So it feels like you've had that opportunity for reinvention or starting over or like just entering a new season. Tell me a little bit about that. What is it that makes you able to embrace that change and move forward?
Well, sometimes it's necessity.
Sometimes it's not your choice.
Sometimes it's necessity. When my first husband and I moved from LA, I'm a nester, I tend to put my roots down and I tend to, create a life and community and all that stuff. Well, he got transferred to San Jose, where I am now, and I came kicking and screaming. I wrote about it in a book. I said, you can see these long two ruts along Highway 101 going north, and those are my heels being dragged 400 miles north. And we were up here for a year and a half in a rented house because we were supposed to go back to Los Angeles. And we broke up. He was having an affair with somebody he met in a bank. And so here I was in an area I really grew to love. And with two little boys, I have twin sons, and they were about 5.5 at the time. And my choice was either move back to our house back in the LA area, which would be like an hour and a half from my parents, or stay where I was. And I decided bloom where I was planted. This area was rated #1 for professional women, and it was also rated #1 for single women. And I thought, well, thank you, God. I'm right where I need to be. And so I had a little part-time job working for a demonstrating company, demonstrating crepe making pans and all kinds of silly things. By then I had 2 bachelor degrees, mind you. So I saw a job offering like a regional director for Quaker State Oil, and it was part-time. So I took it. I thought, and I figure I can do about anything besides, tightrope walk or maybe neuroscience or brain surgery. And I just think we underestimate our capacity to just figure things out. We can figure things out. It's in all of us to just kind of figure things out. It may not be so pretty in the beginning. Anyway, so I took a part-time job and just kind of went from there. Had a wonderful area, 5 counties, got to go to Monterey, took my kids out of kindergarten sometimes, they went with me. And then I saw an opportunity to start in telecommunications, which I did for 17 years. And they put me through graduate school twice. And I don't like being bored. I can't stand doing the same thing over and over. And so I applied for different positions within the technical field in marketing and ended up as a fiber optics sales specialist, which I loved, working with the largest corporations in the world and really fun teams and stuff. But I decided to leave that. By then I had my master's degrees and I was going to strike out on my own, which I did. That was not pretty either. So anyway, I left there and, did a couple of different things. I was a director of a couple of headhunting companies. I was an interior designer. That's one of the things I love, interior decorating. But through that, I started my consulting company and realized that when I would go into a company, the owner would say, you need to fix them. These people over here, you need to fix them. And I saw, no, I need to fix you.
Fix you.
And so I started getting just a whole lot of training and education and coaching, executive coaching, leadership coaching, small groups, everything. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit of you pursued a certain area of interest and expertise, and a little bit of it called you, like it sort of narrowed itself as you were into it. Is that how it played out?
My passion is really growing and blessing others. And if, and I could do that to a certain extent in Pacific Bell. They allowed me a lot of opportunities for extracurricular activities in organizational development and training and stuff like that. But it just wasn't feeding my soul anymore. And my belief is that many of us have two careers, one that feeds our pocketbook, the other one that feeds our soul. And so that's the route I decided to take.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you mind sharing how old you were when you made that transition?
Oh man, let me see. I'll be 76 in August. I can't believe it either. And that was in
Neither can I.
that was 1997.
Okay.
1997.
All right. Because
I was 50. I was 50.
Okay. All right. So my reason for asking is because I often have conversations with women sort of in the midst of their career, usually some sort of corporate career, and usually some sort of middle manager type career, and they're miserable, and but they feel like it's too late to start over, and a lot of them have some seemingly really good solid reasons why they feel it's too late. But I'm trying to help dispel that myth that there's a timeline for achieving goals or for starting a new dream. And so that's why I was curious when you made that leap, because for a lot of people, that's a big leap and it's scary. And the deeper you get into your career and the older that you are, the scarier and harder it is.
Yes.
Do you have any guidance or words of wisdom for our sister women out there who are finding themselves in that scenario?
Oh, a lot. Number one, join a group of professional women. That was one thing that I did with my business, especially after my second husband kind of kicked him out. I thought I needed to be surrounded by a group of business owner women. And so that's what I joined. I joined just all women's groups in business. And you see all ages. And it's amazing how women like in their 70s or 80s are starting new businesses as financial planners and stuff. So you need to be exposed to it so you see that you're not the only one. Because when we're going something, we feel like we're the only one sometimes. I'm the only one who's going through this right now. You don't know. Because we maybe in our own circle of friends, we don't know anybody that's going through what we're going through. So we need to know people who are going through what we're going through and where we are, age-wise or anything else. Number two is, and I've worked with people like this. I had one client who actually like several female directors at Intel kind of kept referring me. And one of them had certain goals in mind for her career. And so we worked on those. We worked on things that were tripping her up or getting in her way. Sometimes we just stumble over each other in ways that ourselves in ways that we don't understand or see. And so we worked on that. We worked on something called the business of you. It's like a one-page business plan where you lay out what your visions are, which are really intense vision. I mean, really, really clear. And then what are you going to need to get there? And she said something to me. She said, I've never told anyone this before, but I want to have a winery. And here she was in a technical job. So that's part of it too. What do you really want to do? And start creating a plan to get there while you're doing what you're doing here. So then that will build excitement and passion and make it happen and tell as many people as you can. Because you know what? The more that you get the word out there, you're going to more find people to support you. So that's what we did. She actually ended up exactly in the city she wanted with Intel, doing exactly the job that she was aiming for with her boyfriend, who she was trying to join there, and with a business plan to work towards having a winery. What can you do now? I've worked with Marcia Weeder from America's Dream Coach, and I'm certified in her work. And there's our belief that most of us, or too many of us, don't have a wide awake dream. As we get to be older, what's your wide awake dream? So create that wide awake dream. Write it down. I mean, just let it flow, like a stream of consciousness or something. Or start really verbalizing. I mean, I figure things out by talking. So what is your dream? And what steps can you take right now to get there? And what are the things that could possibly get in your way that you can deal with, get rid of, ignore, or work around? Because life's too short to feel stuck.
Yeah.
It's a miserable way to live. My belief is to not deal with the stuff that makes you feel bad. I mean, I know the headlines. I don't marinate in any of the bad news. It's not good for me. I can't change it. And that may be part of the problem. A lot of people, there's a lot of stuff that's just not very pretty going on out there. Well, why do we need to know all about it, all the details? We don't, truly, unless you're right there and you can make a change. Only change we can make is in ourselves
Right.
and the attitude or the angle at which we look at things.
The other thing, when we last spoke, I can't remember how this came up, but we talked about motivation and we talked about inspiration and the differences between the
Mhm.
two. I'd love to hear your perspective on that. What's the difference and like how do we get some basically?
Motivation is short-lived, number one. It's trying to light a fire under somebody or light a fire under yourself. It's like having a carrot before the horse, donkey, or whatever, whoever is leading you on your path. After a while, you run out of carrots and you're trying to replace the carrots with something else. I think it's good to have little motivations like that along the way, that when I achieve this, I'm going to allow myself to do this. But it's from the outside. Inspiration is lighting a fire within. It comes to the Latin word inspire, which means to breathe in. And if we can do that, and we can do that, not if, we can do that. And if we want to have more inspiring people, more inspiring life, more inspiring business, we need to become inspired people. And the best way that I know is to develop and define what is your highest purpose for being here on earth. That's very inspiring. And we can't change the world, but we can maybe change just a little piece of it and then be that and inspire somebody else, which will bring it out to a bigger piece, So the work that I do in leadership is based on this whole concept. And it's a concept of the spark, the flame, and the torch. And the spark is what we light inside ourselves, and it's based on our higher purpose. The flame is how we hand that off to the community around us. And we attract more inspiring people, and we can help them be more inspiring. And then the torch is then illuminating the world. And we all can have a piece in that. So that's the best way that I can explain it. Motivation is like kind of a kick in the butt. Inspiration is like a deep breath that lifts you up and moves you forward.
So how is that playing out for you in this season of your life in terms of your spark and where that's coming from?
Well, I'm hanging out with a couple of different groups. One is I'm a higher ground leader pathfinder through the Secretariat Institute, and it's all based on purpose. And through purpose, we build passion for ourselves, and it just creates this energy that lifts us up, and we see ourselves differently. So I'm part of the higher purpose master group, and we have regular meetings and trainings and stuff. But the discussions are really so deep and expansive. And it's wonderful because you can't always have these kind of conversations with people around you. I don't know anybody in I guess maybe in my immediate group of friends that I can have some of these conversations. But, in everyday life, we just normally don't have these kinds of people in our lives. And I can have some with my partner. So that's part of it. It's, seeking out, just get into a discussion group or a meditation group or a group that, studies something that's really inspirational to you. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that we can do this. And like I said before, I don't believe we can do anything by ourselves. It takes a village to raise us. And so we can create that village and create that family. I mean, I think we're all one unit anyway, but we have to kind of look in the corners and see how we can bring the pieces of that unit into light. So that's part of what keeps me going. My life hasn't been easy. The past few years have been really challenging with my son's health and everything. And every day I wake up and I say out loud, I mean, truly, this is the way it goes. Today I choose to be happy, and that makes me happy.
That makes you, how could you not when you do?
I know, I choose to be happy. And it sounds kind of silly, and I'm saying it to myself, but I'm saying it to the universe. And when I start feeling down, I said, no, today I chose to be happy. And today I choose to be grateful. And I don't know if you know this or not, but gratitude actually rewires our brain. It changes the synapses in our brain, and it rewires our brain to find more things to be grateful for and to bring more joy into our life, and better things start happening. I mean, I'm grateful I'm talking to you. I'm grateful I could talk. I'm grateful I can sit up and feed myself. But there's so many things to be grateful that we take for granted. I mean, I can move this little mouthpiece up and down. A lot of people can't do that. It sounds silly, but it is one of the most powerful things that we can do. Truly, truly. And I'm not the only one who says that. There's a lot of research. And even when my son was dying, I mean, I could find something to be grateful for in that day. I could be there for him, but I had, but when I walked out, I could walked out of the hospital, I could look around and see the birds in the sunshine and be grateful for that. He's fine now. I've been like 4 different times in the last several years when I thought I was watching him die. One time I said, please God, put me in the bed and have him standing over me. He's fine. I mean, he's good now. He's in remission, but it's challenging. Life isn't pretty, but we could always find a little ray of sunshine or something to be grateful for.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so powerful. And you make such an excellent point, is that life isn't always a smooth, happy, easy road. And we have to figure out how to still stay connected to our purpose during those times, to feel that fulfillment, and even to get tiny specks of joy and gratitude.
Yes.
I think that's a really good lesson to learn, for sure.
Well, yes. I know if you read the F. Scott Peck's book, A Road Less Traveled, the first sentence is life is difficult. And the more you accept that, the easier life will be. And when things have happened and heavy stuff like that, I just say, why me, God? And you know what the answer I get is, why not you? What makes you think you're so special that you should go through life unscathed? Nobody goes through life unscathed. And you're not going to and neither is that person over there or that person over there. No matter what they're going through right now, though it's all rosy, they're not going to go through life unscathed. So what are you going to do with that information? And that was a kick in the head.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Not exactly what we want to hear, maybe, but it's the reality.
Life is tough.
Yeah. Well, what final thoughts, comments, and anything that you want to share before we close today?
Oh, I'm grateful for you. I truly am. I'm grateful for the work. I'm grateful for the work you're doing. I'm grateful for being here with you. And those are my final words. Just hang in there, people. Look around you and see the possibilities. As long as we stay focused on one thing, we're missing out on all this other stuff around here. So keep your heart and your eyes open.
I love that. Thank you so much, Lynnea. Thank you for sharing your experiences, your stories. I find it just very inspirational. You give me a feeling of abundance and possibility and opportunity. I mean, that's what you inspire in me. So thank you.
Thank you. That's wonderful. That's what I want to do.
Well, thank you. Have a great day.
You too, dear. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of the Blueprint Breakers podcast, Unveiling Your Wide Awake Dream. And a very special thank you to my guest, Lynnea Hagen. And to you, the listener, thank you for listening and sharing this episode with your friends. If you haven't done it yet, please go to your podcast provider and leave us a 5-star rating. And if you have found value in our podcast, we are now humbly accepting donations, gratuities. You can access the link in the podcast show notes or via my Instagram profile at amypalmer.today. Have a great week. Keep on breaking those blueprints and rewriting your own.